we were supposed to have a guest speaker. And so today the sermon is small, and then I'm going to present what happened in Texas. Okay? Let's begin with our scripture reading. Will you stand, please? 1 Corinthians 12:25-27. So that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. Word of God for the people of God. You may be seated. Now, as a church, did you understand that you're all part of the body of Christ? And have you ever heard like a coach say to the team, we're only as strong as our weakest member? Yeah, because it takes us all. Even if you think you don't have gifts and talents, you have something that you can give to the family. Okay? Over the last week, we've been working together to comfort the Maluda family, to feed them, hug them, talk to them. And it's been very stressful because it's so hard to see people that we love in so much pain. But it shows that we are a family of God because we have surrounded them this week. Each person sitting here today is valued and treasured. So I'm going outside the box today, and I know you find that hard to believe because I never go outside the box, but I'm going outside the box today, and I'm going from being a family of God to our church being a family of God, not just inside the church, but outside the church. If you don't know, we currently have quite a few ministries that we do, and I'm going to talk to them about them really quickly. On the 5th Sunday of every month, we take up an offering for Residing Hope, which is an orphanage here in Florida. And so we then send that money directly to them, all the pennies of it. We also have a dog rescue that people bring stuff to me, and they just, they need food, and they need leashes, and they need bowls, and things like that. Old grungy towels that look horrible, but they're still usable because they can use them in the kennels. Care Portal. And I will tell you that John and Kitty are the ones who manage the Care Portal. It is an amazing organization where they take up donations through the portal to kids who are in foster care or having issues, and social workers need to help the family find help. And so we will get posts that says, this child has just been placed in foster care. They have no clothes for school. Or, at Christmas time, we get requests to help with Christmas presents because some of these families have got so many kids. So that's another one of our ministries. Our newest ministry is the Starburst Youth Ministry. And it's going well. It's amazing. I think the kids like it. They come. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Travis is kind of goofy if you guys haven't figured that out yet. But I tell you what, if I had his energy, I'd be in heaven.
He's just a younger version of Sia.
Yeah, that's not so bad. So it is so rewarding as a church when we can support these ministries. In Matthew 28:18-20, it says, then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. You see, that's the Great Commission. We've been called to reach out to others. We've been called to help those in need. And so that's what I'm going to be showing you today. Now, I want to read you a little thing I found this week that I felt kind of says it all and how we are God's family. It's called Life is Like a Mayonnaise Jar and 2 Cups of Coffee. I know your minds are going, where is she going with this one? All right. When things in your life seem almost too much to handle within 24 hours in a day and it's just not enough, remember a mayonnaise jar and 2 cups of coffee. A professor stood before his philosophy class and had some items in front of him. And when the class began, wordlessly, he picked up a very large and empty mayonnaise jar and proceeded to fill it with golf balls. Now, he asked the students if the jar was full, and they were like, yeah, it definitely is full. So then he picked up a box of pebbles, and he poured those pebbles in the jar. Some of the youth have seen me do this, so I have got looks from them. And he shook the jar lightly, and the pebbles just rolled into all the open areas in the jar between the golf balls. And so he said, okay, you think it's full? And they all agreed it was. And so he then took up a box of sand and he poured it into the jar. And of course, the sand filled up everything else because those little pieces can get everywhere. The empty space between the sand was filled. With the sand was filled. And so the students unanimously said, yes. And then the professor produced 2 cups of coffee from under the table and poured the liquid into the jar, effectively filling it even fuller. So the professor then said, I want you to notice that this jar represents life. Those golf balls are important. They are your God, your family, your children, your health, friends, and your favorite pastor, of course. And, that's what those golf balls represent. And then, even if everything else was lost, you can still find happiness. And then we go to the pebbles. And the pebbles are things that really matter, like your job, in your house, in your car. But, you have God, so we're filled. And then you put the sand in the jar. That was everything else. All those unimportant things that we try to put to the forefront. All right. But listen to this. If we put that junk, everything else into the jar first and fill that with sand, there's no room in your life for everything else. There's no room in your life for God. And so we've got to keep our jar emptied of that sand so that the big things can be addressed and met. Does that make sense? So then one of the students raised her hand to inquire what the coffee represented. And he said, I'm glad you asked. It just goes to show no matter how full your life may seem, there's always room for a couple cups of coffee with your friends. Yeah. And I'm reminded this week, I went over to Lexi's and Carl was there having coffee with a friend. And so I thought of Carl when I read that. All right, so we're going to get the PowerPoint I'm seeing. And let me just kind of give you a little overview of what this is going to be about. It's just minimized. So Laura Lambert is the head of Faith Responders. And we have several people here in our congregation that have already qualified for Faith Responders by taking the courses. One of them is getting ready to get his badge. So when we arrived in Texas, Laura and I and Sean Bishop, who was a chaplain in the Air Force for years and years and years. And now he is working, he's working as a pastor down, I think, I don't know, down towards the bottom of Florida. And so we all ended up and we met in Texas. Do you see it, Sam? Okay. And it was a rough start to the trip. I got there fine. Sean got there fine. Laura's plane had issues, so they left late. She didn't make her connector. So Sean and I basically sat in San Antonio's airport for about 5 hours waiting for her. We were all supposed to be at the same time. And so that kind of thwarted our beginning plans because our beginning plans were to go to Kerrville. And that's what we've heard on the news is Kerrville, Kerrville, Kerrville. And I'm going to say that Kerrville, they had all those deaths, but the damages there were much more minimal than some of the other places that we went. We went to multiple places, and our goal was not to go down there and to pick up, the trash and the debris and stuff. Our goal was to go for spiritual and pastoral care. And so basically what I did that week is we're out in a pair of tennis shoes, walking the streets, going to houses, praying with people. And I will tell you that in the course of that week, there were 15 salvations. And, that makes everything worth it, no matter what. And so anyways, our job was just, when I would go into a place, I would say to them, is there anything you're needing? Because I had access through the churches there to help with food or water and things like that. Most of these people had lost everything. And so the next thing I would say is, do you mind if I pray with you? And so I would pray with them. And I'd ask if I could give them a hug. All of them wanted hugs. And I only had 2 people that did not want me to pray with them. One was an atheist, and I will tell you that story in a little bit. And then one was a Jehovah's Witness, and he said he could pray himself. So that's what I did. I prayed with them. I actually was partnered with a gentleman from East Texas named Manny, because most of the neighborhoods we went to were bilingual, but most of them were really predominantly Spanish. And so Manny was, he would take those. So anyways, here we go. I don't know how to use this thing, but here we go. Is that a no-go?
What do you, it's upside down. That.
Oh, it's the one you can't see. All right, so click the video, Sam. This is 2 weeks after the flood. Now, mind you, you're going to see a lot of water here, but it's 2 weeks after. So this is just a tiny little amount of what they experienced. And this is a baseball field. And if you look closely enough, can you make it bigger, Sam? There you go. That is a baseball field. And you can see you have to have it paused. But over here is just this much of the top of the backstops. And that's 2 weeks. Hey, you can take it down. That's 2 weeks after the flood. Now, where I'm sitting in the car, on the other side of me were houses. And you had to go up a fairly, maybe a 10-foot hill to get to those houses. And those houses had also taken in water during the flood. And that's how extensive it was. These are just a couple of houses. This one right here is, you can see it right after the flood, several days after the flood, and then what it was when it was there. And most of the houses look very much like that. Most were not underwater anymore. So on the first day, we met with Pastor, who is in the blue shirt, that was the pastor for the First Methodist in Menard, Florida, which is a ways down the road from Kerrville. And so they had, it's a very small town. Menard only has, I'm gonna tell you wrong. Oh, in that previous picture, where, where Short Street is, they pumped 25 million gallons of water for 7 days to get it to look like that.
The guy that's standing next to the sign, is that the one that you see above it where it says Short Street? Is that the sign? That's how high the water?
Yes, yes,
And that's the house in the background?
yes, that's what you're looking at. Most of these houses have maybe 6 foot of water in them at one point in time. So anyways, the good things here is on that very first day, the water rose 25 to 30 feet, but in the first hour in San Angelo, which is where this is at, they had 100 rescues by boat. And when we joined faith responders, we joined with Texans on Missions and just joined their team. And they had already, so there were 167 work orders. Now, mind you, that doesn't sound like a lot, but there were multiple places there. Samaritan's Purse were there, the Red Cross was there. And so just Texans on Missions in San Angelo had 167 jobs, and they still had 74 to do. However, they were still getting some every day, but just not as many at the time. All right. So Menard is a small town, about like Willaca, about 1,300 people. And they had already, so Pastor David, that's who that is, met with us, and they had already worked within their community. They had a big operation going on. And at that point, they had 82 properties severely damaged. So think about Willaca and 82 houses severely damaged, with it already at a cost, it's still rising, of $2.8 million in damages. Now, mind you, if FEMA came and declared your house condemned, you would get $43,000 to rebuild. It's not much to rebuild a house. You can't even go buy a mobile home for $43,000. So, and nobody in this situation had flood insurance, because to get flood insurance was $2,000 a month, and there hadn't been a flood there for almost 30 years. And so nobody had any coverage for any of this. So on day one, we met with the White Cap leader. That's what they call the head Texan on mission, Rupert Robbins. And then our host was the pastor right here in this far side. And that we stayed at his church. It was a huge church. It had 3 services, but we stayed in a Sunday school room and slept on mattresses. And the blue stuff behind, those are shower trailers. And then the next one that's behind that are washer and dryers. And so when we needed clothes, we could take them, put them in a bag, they would wash them and put them back on the table for us. And that kind of thing. And you could go and take your shower there, which we took our shower at the church because they had facilities in the gym. But so then on day 2, this is Texans on Missions. This is San Angelo, where we were at primarily. This is the team we joined. They had 120 volunteers working in the community. And then if you can see up here, the brown areas, that's all the flooded parts of San Angelo. Now San Angelo is a bigger town. It has about 98,000 people, and 33% were affected by the flood. At 32,000 people there wasn't enough motels for them. It was just crazy. So the city, what's a primary thing when you have a flood? You've got to clean up, right? Well, the city had 42 trash trucks. San Angelo did, and all of them were completely underwater, so they were unusable. So they were having to bring in dump trucks from other places to help load stuff. And it was just astronomical. Samaritan's Purse, Billy Graham's Rapid Response Team, Red Cross, Rubicon, and many, many more agencies were there working, just as like we were, except that they were out working and cleaning up. So the next day, we went to Paint Rock. Now, Paint Rock has about 240 people, and the devastation in this community was huge. So this is the Paint Rock Global Methodist Church. We met Pastor Terry, and then went and looked and did some things. So this is his house. They had to tear out all that because of the flood. He has been a missionary before he came back and retired, and he taught people how to drill water wells with things that they can find over in those other countries. I think Bolivia is one he did a lot. So anyways, he had a training facility, and so he had little cabins, and the people wanting to come, missionaries that wanted to come to learn how to do this, to take back across. So all of that stuff's going to have to be rebuilt. Oh, sorry. All right. So these next two slides, a few slides are from this house. This is the Ferris house, okay? And we got there. You can see all the daylight coming in here. That's a wall that's completely gone. Their home had to be completely gutted. They were still trying to get things out. All the drywall, everything had come down to the studs. This house did. And then that's where her car was, up in a tree. And then if you go, this is her sister's house next door, very new, and it had moved about 30 feet from what it was on, where it was. So this is very interesting. So right here, do you see this pole? That was in the ground right in front of him. That was on top of it. It was the carport. And it took these great big, huge concretes and just washed that thing on down a ways. And then this was right here. This little shed was right behind him, and it ended up on top of their other shed. And just demolished it. So much devastation. All right, this bridge in San Saba. San Saba is another town we went to because we were going to the pastors to find out what we could do. All right, and so this is San Saba. This is sitting here. I'm sitting right here in the car. This is the bridge, and that's where the water is at 2 leaks. During the flood, it came over this about 3 feet. So that's how tall it was. This is one of the RVs in San Saba that had been taken off its foundation, or the where it was sitting, and they were just all over the place. This one here is an RV that hit it and shattered. It's on a tree. It's all kinds of debris with it. And then this is one of the RV pads. You see how the water is all washed out underneath it. This is what it looks like on the streets of San Angelo. Everything you own is sitting out on the street, on, your pictures, all your memories are right there. And so this was a disaster. And those of us who had the training, when you have a disaster like a hurricane or flood, the debris is sorted into piles. Electronics have to be on one pile, yard debris on one pile, and then just trash on another pile, trash furniture, right? And then bags, anything in bags in a different pile. So these people, they needed to do something, so they started getting their houses, and they just were thrown it on a pile. And so one of the jobs was that the crews had to do was go and get this stuff sorted, because if without being sorted, FEMA will pay no money to the city for anything. So, yeah,
hang on, so that's not. They don't wanna pay them for that, but yet they wanna give people who came to the country illegally money, but yet we have a disaster, and they don't wanna give us money because we didn't sort the garbage?
Yep.
Why is it still our company?
well, FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Association. It's the governmental agency. So in order for the city to get their money, they have to follow those rules. And sometimes those rules really are a hindrance when you're having devastation. And that's a good question about. So,
I'm saying, how come people who are not in disaster or really help get free money, but the other people who actually really need the money don't get it, just because?
absolutely, absolutely. All right, so this is a 2-story motel. And the water was actually up to here. So this is everything from the first. They had just remodeled it and was opening it the next week after it was left. So yeah, this is that baseball field again. Yeah. All right, this was the best day that was there. So the Global Methodist Church that we were staying at got $80,000 from Mid-Texas General Conference. And so Scott, the pastor at the church, he was kind of following Manny and I around. And we would come out of the house and he'd say, what's the story? And so he was basically giving people $750, which doesn't sound like much considering the damage, but it was $750 that they could buy what they needed, you know? So this was a lady who, her brother lives with her. He's handicapped on a walker, and her, and she was trying to clean up this house by herself. Her daughter got their help, but anyway, so we had told Scott her story, and you know, the blessing was I got to pray with all of them, and you know, the hugs, they needed them just as much as me. So, anyways, but this lady here, her husband was disabled. She has a son who was disabled. I'm guessing. I don't know. He was about 12, and so, anyways, they couldn't get in their house, and they were just sitting on the porch. So I came by and asked them what they needed, and all they said was, "We just need food and water." And so we went to some more houses, and meanwhile I was working on the food and water. And so we had just brought in the food and water. But as I was getting the food and water from the warehouse at this other church, the lady handed me a $50 gift card and said, take this Visa card today. So we got $50. And then as we're getting in the car to pull away, another one wanted to know the address. She was coming out of the church, and she went and got $100 gift card for HEB, which is the grocery store. And so, just kind of in droves, we each went by, you know. So, and that's all of us. And then this house here, yeah, it's still underwater. It hasn't received much fruit. So. Anybody have any questions about it?